India's residential real estate space has seen a new lease of life since the last 6 months, and the latest data on Q3 of the calendar year seems to suggest that this trend is continuing. Over the last few days, we've had data from several agencies, and now CBRE has put out some data which shows that the residential market in the third quarter of this year has seen housing sales up 46%. Sales have rebounded nearly 86% when compared year on year. Meanwhile, Knight Frank today has said that registration numbers in Mumbai shows the best October in the last 10 years. So are we seeing now something beyond the pent-up demand and the revenge buying and the need to have your own home or a larger home post-pandemic? Have we moved into a purple patch of more sustained growth? To answer some of those questions, I'm joined now by Rajat Gupta. He's Managing Director Business Operations at CBRE India, and Ghulam Zia, Executive Director of Knight Frank. Welcome to both of you, and thank you so much for speaking with us here on the India Development Debate. Mr. Gupta, let me begin with your key findings for Q3 of this calendar year, and is it really standing out compared to the increase and improve in volumes we'd already seen?
Absolutely, Tamana. The take-up has been extremely encouraging, and especially in light of the horrific second wave that we went through this year. After that, clocking in 50,000 units, in one quarter. The tremendous increase it represents over Q2, over the last year, it's stupendous. And just to put things in perspective, 2019, which is supposedly our best year ever, housing unit sales peaked at about 165,000. Right, we had 50,000 units this year in Q3, close to 50,000 in Q1. So hopefully by the end of the year, if the momentum continues, we could actually be surpassing what happened in 2019, and that's definitely extremely encouraging. Of course, multiple reasons, whether it's liquidity or a very soft interest rate regime, or you spoke about revenge buying. Of course, there are multiple factors, but regardless, of what prompted the buy, the numbers are there for everyone to see.
Ghulam, is it safe to say that it's here to stay? Last time you and I spoke, I remember we talked about whether the real estate space is truly red hot or just about recovering, coming back to, say, a 2019 level, which in itself was a good year. What are you seeing now with sustained good news coming in terms of numbers?
The recent festive season has really done wonders for residential real estate of India, and that in the backdrop of almost 5 or so consecutive bad festive seasons. So what we are right now witnessing, something which started immediately after the second wave peaked, in fact slightly before that in a few cities like Mumbai, etc., is that this month after month, the numbers that we are observing, that we are recording, are far better, and which is now peaking out during the festive season. And the festive season sales have really been far better than at least last 5 years. In a few cities, it could actually be decadal best as well. So that is what is giving us conviction to say that if I have been watching this for last at least almost 2 quarters, then there is no reason to doubt that this is not here to stay. But I would still wait for what happens on the other side of festive season, because the festive season nonetheless gives you that much needed wind beneath your wings. So I would want to wait for maybe a couple of more months to convincingly say that here the numbers or the upswing is here to stay.
And I'd just like to add to what Ghulam said. Of that entire 50,000 in Q3, 49,000 in Q1, almost 78% of the take-up has been in the mid-market and the affordable segment, which essentially means that the masses are participating. which is, of course, a very encouraging sign from an economic recovery perspective.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, Rajat. And I was actually going to ask you that where is this coming from? Because when you spoke about liquidity, there are a number of factors that we're seeing, and usually stock markets and real estate boom hand in hand. You see quite a link over there, but you're saying mid segments are doing well. Talk to me about cities. You, of course, track the top 7-8 cities, and from your data, I saw that Pune has shown a 33% growth, followed by Mumbai, Bangalore, Hyderabad. Why this spike in Pune, you think?
I guess, the numbers are what they are, Tamanna, and as I mentioned, 78% or almost 80% is in the mid-market and affordable segment. And these are the cities where you have millennials, you have young populations where people are buying their first home. It is not just meant from an investment perspective. So I think it's natural that the cities where you have fairly younger population that are looking for apartments, housing, their first homes in the affordable mid segment, you would see a huge uptick in demand.
Yeah, Ghulam, has pandemic changed behavior so much, because we're now talking about millennials buying homes. It was anathema to millennials to put down money on real estate. That's what defined them in a sense. Have we seen that change?
Well, I would say it's a bit too soon to say that. And because a pandemic is once in a century kind of a phenomenon, it's natural to jump to conclusions and, give the credit to pandemic for whatever is happening around us. But I would say we need to also wait and watch, because whatever transaction, the rise in transactions that we're talking about also comes in the backdrop of almost, as I said earlier, half a decade long of a depression. Let's not forget that in that half decade, the job market was booming. The economy was booming. You had everything else falling in place. In fact, just prior to pandemic, we saw almost 60 million square feet of new office space absorption in the country, which means so many more new jobs. So let's not forget that we had half a decade of a huge depression that the housing market of this country was coming out of. And that today, one thing which I would always want to talk about is that when the prices were falling in this last 5-6 years, why were people not buying in spite of everything else falling in place? Was perhaps they were waiting for the right price to come. And today, when we have realized that the prices have bottomed out, we see a huge amount of interest coming back. So to me, most of this number is pent-up demand of what people haven't bought for last half a decade is coming forward. And hence, at least I am not in a rush to give the credit to pandemic that because of pandemic, the behavioral shift has happened and people are buying. I would wait, watch it out for another couple of quarters to say that with conviction.
Yeah, fair enough. Another interesting data point is what is happening with leasing options. And I come back to what CBRE has reported today. You're saying office leasing activity grew 140% in Q3. Rajat, what do you see behind this? Is this a reversal of the trend which we saw right after the pandemic with the big shift of work from home? Is it because people are now wanting staff back in office?
Well, the 140% number, of course, it seems huge, but you have to look in the perspective of what's been happening over the last few years, right? So it was 60 odd million square feet peak in 2019, fell sharply to about 36 million square feet last year. So it is a low base effect to a very large extent. And, that 140% needs to be looked, in context of what happened in quarter two. And quarter two is when we had the second wave, right? Literally, everything was shut down. So, however, of course, over the last year or so, it's not been all doom and gloom. Several industry sectors have done exceedingly well. Tech is one of them. E-com is another. Flex is there. So, it was pent-up demand. It was several sectors doing exceedingly well. Extremely low base effect of quarter two. So combination of all those factors, I would say has led to this number. But overall, we are far away from where we were in 2018 and 19. All this number shows is that finally, hopefully, we are headed in the right direction. However, it's going to be a long haul till we reach the booming highs of 2019.
Yeah, so the commercial space is of course moving slower, but the base is low. Ghulam, your input on what you're seeing with commercial real estate. You've mentioned how the residential real estate has got a new wind after half a decade of sluggishness. Are we far away from the same kind of enthusiasm for commercial space?
Yes, I would say we are looking at a turnaround, but we need to be a bit cautious before we jump to conclusion that this is the new wave, because even while our quarterly numbers, the way we have been watching the 30th September closure, we were looking at almost about 12.5 odd million square feet of transaction in a quarter, which is a pretty good number. If I look at, just multiplying it by 4, I would perhaps reach that magic number of 50-55 million. But then let's not forget that the previous 2 quarters were pretty depressing, were pretty bad. So this 12.5 million could be perhaps one of the best performances historically for a quarter, but then that is still a bit too early to jump to conclusion that this is a sign of good times. As I said, this is a good number, and that good number, as Rajat spoke about, is reflecting the realities on ground with economic turnaround, with a lot of these macro perspectives falling in place. So this number is pretty much in line. And if these macro pictures are also continuing to grow the way they are growing for the last couple of months, then obviously the next quarter will also look as good, which means that we would inch closer to that magic number of 60 that both I and Rajat spoke about earlier. And as the way things are moving, perhaps we will actually cross 40 million, which will be a great news. With first 2 quarters almost drying up, last 2 quarters taking you closer to 40. Will be a great achievement, and I am very confident that we are heading that way, but then we need to be cautious to really wait and watch the data.
Yeah, so a tempered enthusiasm there about all of those numbers that you see. The headline numbers look great, the percentage rises look great, but they're on a low base, and there is quite a bit of pain that the real estate space has gone through. So it's still healing. The direction and the signs are good so far. Thank you so much, Rajat and Ghulam, for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.